Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's my pleasure to rise today to support the motion moved by the member for Lumsden Morris in support of the throne speech. This is a speech centred around solidity, around stability. Its message that we are on course, that we are staying on course and on track, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to a balanced budget, as we continue to promote sound, strong economic leadership and common-sense policies for the people of this province. There have been some suggestions that the direction laid out in the speech is too rural-focused, which to me sounds mightily condescending. The Leader of the Opposition has also suggested that it lacks vision, that somehow two brand-new hospitals in North Battleford and Saskatoon, new schools, new cellular services, new highways and infrastructure, including the Regina bypass, which future generations will wonder how they got around without. A renewed focus on crime reduction, including amending the Police Act to allow municipalities with populations under 500 to join regional police services. An ongoing, simply seamless transition to a single health region. Expanded parental leave, 2 new community health centres coming on stream, that all of this is somehow old hat. We beg to differ. Former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair once said the only chance of peace is a readiness for war. And similarly, the only chance of maintaining a strong economy is a readiness for those who come along and threaten to spend us out of it. We are ready. The Leader of the Opposition appointed himself economy critic this summer. Command economy critic would be more like it. His first order of business was a pipeline replacement scheme that would cost Sask Energy alone $50 billion. Pipelines, Mr. Deputy Speaker, naturally have a lifespan of up to 100 years. The 2016 Husky spill isn't even considered to have been caused by aging pipelines. It was caused by geotechnical sloping. The economy critic himself admitted that his pipeline scheme was untested and untried. Nevertheless, this was his economic headliner, right out of the gate, $50 billion for Sask Energy ratepayers alone. Then came his proposed royalty review and increase. This at a time when the Saskatchewan royalty structure is widely considered to be stable and fair. And at a time of uncertainty in the energy sector, an Ed Stelmach-like overhaul, such as the one the Leader of the Opposition and the member for Regina Northeast are proposing, is the last thing the sector needs. Let alone the environment critic has also mused openly about how government should get back into the business of owning oil wells. As for Renew, another NDP economic headliner, Rewind would be more like it. A green retrofit loan program, or climate Ponzi scheme, as the Premier has called it. What could possibly go wrong? As we all know, the Leader of the Opposition has questioned the economics of pipelines. He tells us he's a critical thinker, that he favours an empirical, fact-based approach to issues. Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the facts are these. If the current oil price differential were to continue, because the federal government has killed 2 pipelines and stalled a 3rd, if that differential were to continue over the course of an entire year, there would be a $500 million impact in Saskatchewan on royalties and a $7.4 billion impact on the oil and gas sector. And that has a direct impact on highways and hospitals, social services and schools. Of course, we hope things will turn around. But in this province, last year, oil production was down by 6% since 2014. The value of oil was down by 42%. Oil well drilling down 30%, employment down 10%, and investment down 40%. Capital spending in the oil and gas sector in Canada has also dropped significantly, down 44% since 2014, with the majority of that capital flowing to the U.S. and provincial total oil revenues between 2014 and 2017 were down 49%. Let's call it 50. What we are seeing, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is the perfect storm of no pipelines, regulatory overkill, from the carbon tax to Bill C-69, and massive deregulation south of the border. Across Canada, 100,000 workers have been laid off in the sector, and of course Saskatchewan has not been immune to that. So I would suggest that the Leader of the Opposition lay off the 1% talk, because that's just an old cliche about the oil and gas sector and has nothing to do with the province we live in now. And that he lay off the wealth redistribution talk. The same wealth redistribution talk the new member for Regina Northeast expressed back in 2009 that, quote, "My objective as a democratic socialist isn't to build a strong economy." Is not. Remember those comments, because they casually overlook that real people, real workers are affected by those numbers I just mentioned, when projects such as Trans Mountain and the rest continue to stall or die. Jobs die too. Those are the simple economics of the situation. And everything we do, Mr. Deputy Speaker, from passing the Energy Export Act last spring, to taking the federal government to court over the carbon tax, to making our case against Bill C-69 and for Trans Mountain and other pipeline projects, it's all about protecting jobs and attracting job creators and protecting the impact on people's pocketbooks. When I bought flowers for my mom at Thanksgiving, the lady behind the counter was complaining somewhat about the high price of gas. That's here. Think of what she'd be saying in BC, and imagine what she'll be saying if the federal carbon tax is allowed to kick into gear. Real impacts on people. Earlier this summer, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we announced what could be the lowest Sask energy commodity rate since 1999. It was a proud day. But it turns out that decrease will end up being dwarfed by the carbon tax, which will increase costs to the average home by at least 10% on the commodity side and wipe out any benefit of the rate decrease. A decrease that even the former Sask energy critic, member for Prince Albert Northcote, agreed would be, quote, beneficial to the people of Saskatchewan. But of course, no benefit at all will be realized with a carbon tax, which the members opposite support, or certainly their leader does. And any so-called economy critic should be all over that impact to people's pocketbooks every single day. In terms of energy and resources, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as stated in the throne speech, we will continue to explore ways to maintain and improve the competitiveness of our oil and gas industry by expanding existing incentives and introducing other new oil well drilling and production incentives. Areas we're looking at are around R&D, technology, environmental management, extending the lives of wells, and making production more efficient. Let's not forget that non-renewable resource revenue now accounts for just around 11% of the province's total revenue, down from a high of 32% in 2008, which is significant. To that end, and as also referenced in the throne speech, the Mineral Development Strategy is a diversification incentive that we hope will increase the amount of mineral exploration around the Creighton-Denair Beach area for ground-based exploration of metals and diamonds to expand exploration focus beyond potash and uranium. Of course, all energy and resource sectors, including potash, uranium, general mining, and of course oil and gas, would be heavily impacted by Bill C-69. A benign enough sounding bill that, in the Canadian Energy Pipeline Association's words, would make ever building another major pipeline project in Canada unimaginable. What's the critic of the economy's views on that? Is he concerned that we have yet to see the regulations for the bill, that projects and consultations could be extended for years or killed at will Will he take a stand on the growing feeling that Canada is in clear and present danger of not being open for business? Perhaps as a quote-unquote democratic socialist, his job is not to build the economy. Maybe that's it. But we feel it is our job to not be ashamed of the oil and gas sector or the uranium and mining sector and the people they employ, including First Nations. Cameco, for example, has traditionally been the largest employer of First Nations in Canada. And the local businesses they patronize, the local contractors they hire, the contributions they make to communities and charities, everything from the Mama Wataton Centre right here in Regina, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to Stars Air Ambulance. Real contributions. The economy isn't the enemy or something that runs separate and apart from everything else. The economy critic should look around because this province has changed. He hasn't, though. Just 2 years ago, this isn't some foolish, youthful episode, he stood behind a poster that read, "Keep the oil in the ground." For real. And I'm wondering today, as the economy critic of the province of Saskatchewan, will the Leader of the Opposition apologize for standing behind that poster? Will he apologize to the people the oil sector employs? Of course, he's equally set against uranium. We know his views on coal, but he never takes into account the people. Somehow he thinks they'll always be able to retrain for some green economy scheme. Perhaps he should consider doing that. It's the people at the heart of our economy that make this province run. And there are faces behind glib city slicker dismissals of entire resource sectors as, quote, low-hanging fruit. In contrast, Mr. Deputy Speaker, here's to the continued economic well-being and momentum of this province under the leadership of our Premier. I support the motion and will not be supporting the amendment.